The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council loomed like a cathedral made of light and shadow. The walls curved upward, meeting at a dome that simulated the spiral arm of the galaxy. Ambassador Hannah Kim stood on the circular platform at the center, her Blue Earth diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the exotic dress of the alien representatives surrounding her. Hannah had practiced this moment countless times, but facing 300 different species from across the known universe made her heart race. Some delegates floated in anti-gravity pods filled with their native atmospheres. Others were merely digital projections, their actual bodies too large or too fragile to travel. The diversity was overwhelming, yet Hannah kept her composure. The people of Earth extend their hands in friendship. She concluded her presentation, using the traditional human gesture even though many species present had no concept of hands. We have overcome our violent past. We have united our planet. We have mastered faster-than-light travel within 3 centuries of discovering radio. We are ready to join the galactic community as equals and contributors. The chamber fell silent. Too silent. Hannah had expected immediate questions, challenges, or at least the background murmur of translation devices. Instead, she faced a wall of alien expressions she couldn't read. High Counselor Talon moved forward. His body resembled a translucent jellyfish, with ribbons of bioluminescent tissue that pulsed with every word he spoke. His 7 eyes focused on Hannah, and his translator produced a voice that sounded artificially calm. "We have observed Earth for many cycles," Talon said. "We have studied your history, your biology, your potential. The Council appreciates your presentation, Ambassador Kim." Hannah felt a flicker of hope. Then she noticed how the other council members were moving away from the center, creating distance between themselves and Earth's representative. "The Council has deliberated," Talon continued, his appendages rippling in what Hannah's cultural training identified as a formal diplomatic pattern. "Earth is denied membership." The words hit Hannah like physical blows. 2 years of preparation, the hopes of 10 billion humans, crushed in a single sentence. On what grounds? She managed to ask, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Humanity's advancement rate is unprecedented and concerning," Talon replied. "Your species moved from primitive combustion engines to dimensional drives in less time than most council races take to develop basic space travel. You have survived multiple near-extinction events through sheer adaptability. Your creativity under pressure is—" He paused, his translator searching for the right word. "Alarming." Another council member moved forward, a tall, insectoid being with compound eyes that reflected Hannah's image back at her 1,000 times over. "Your people fight wars, then make peace with former enemies, then form alliances against new threats," the being said. "Your flexibility of allegiance suggests you cannot be trusted long-term." "That's adaptability," Hannah protested. "We learn from our mistakes. We grow." Too quickly came a voice from a crystalline entity hovering nearby. "Species that evolve too rapidly to stabilize the balance. The Council maintains peace through predictability." Hannah felt her diplomatic training slipping. "So we're being punished for our potential, for what we might become rather than what we are." High Counselor Talon's bioluminescent patterns flashed in what Hannah recognized as the alien equivalent of a sigh. "It is not punishment, Ambassador. It is caution. Furthermore, the Sol system is to be quarantined from all Council worlds for a minimum period of 50 standard cycles." 50 cycles? Hannah gasped. A standard galactic cycle was approximately 1.4 Earth years. "You're cutting us off for 70 Earth years. A mere moment in cosmic time," Talon said. "Perhaps when the quarantine ends, humanity will have reached a more stable developmental plateau." Rage and disbelief warred within Hannah. She had expected challenges, negotiations, probationary periods, not outright rejection and isolation. "The Council's decision is final," Talon concluded. "Your ships will be escorted back to Sol system borders. No Council world will trade with Earth. No Council technology will be shared. No Earth vessels will be permitted beyond the quarantine boundary." From the upper tiers of the chamber, A small, furry delegate with 6 limbs spoke up. What if they violate the quarantine? Then the duration resets. Talon answered simply. Hannah stood straight, her hands clenched at her sides. You fear us now, when we come in peace. What do you think will happen when you turn us away and force us to develop in isolation? A murmur ran through the assembly. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Talon's appendages stilled completely, a sign of absolute certainty in his species. We have run the simulations, Ambassador Kim. Accepting Earth now poses greater risks than containing your development for a time. Hannah looked around the chamber one last time, searching for any sign of support. Finding none, she bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect, but also of defiance. Then we will see you in 50 cycles, she said, and you will find humanity very different from what your simulations predict. Security drones appeared at the chamber's entrance, not threatening, but clearly there to escort her out. As Hannah walked from the platform, screams around the chamber switched to the next agenda item, as if Earth's rejection was just another routine matter. Back aboard the Earth diplomatic vessel, Hannah sat alone in her quarters. Outside her viewport, the massive council station glowed against the backdrop of stars. Soon, they would be escorted back to Sol, back to a humanity hungry for connection with the wider galaxy. She activated her communication link to Earth. United Earth Command. This is Ambassador Kim, she said, her voice flat. They've rejected us. Complete quarantine for 50 cycles minimum. After a long silence, the voice of Earth's Security Council chair responded. Understood, Ambassador. Return protocols activated. Full debriefing upon arrival. Hannah turned off the official channel and opened a private link to her old Academy friend, now Director of Earth's Scientific Development. June, she said, not bothering with formalities. They've banned us because they're afraid of our potential. They think we develop too quickly, adapt too readily. Director Jun Park's voice was thoughtful when he finally replied. So they've given us 70 years to develop without their interference or limitations. You see this as an opportunity? Hannah asked, surprised. They've rejected us, but they've also underestimated us, Jun said. Everything we've learned about their technology during negotiations, we can build on that, improve it. They won't see what's coming until the quarantine ends. Hannah looked out at the council station growing smaller as their ship prepared to depart. The sting of rejection remained, but something else began to grow alongside it. Determination. Begin planning immediately, she said. If they fear what humans might become, let's show them exactly how right they are. As the Earth ship accelerated away from council space, Hannah thought of the many rejected species they'd learned about during negotiations, races deemed too unusual, too independent, or too unpredictable for the Council's rigid order. Perhaps Earth would find allies among the outcasts. The Council had made their decision. They would contain humanity, limit them, isolate them. But in doing so, they had removed all the constraints that might have held humanity back. In the darkness of her cabin, Hannah smiled. The rejection hurt, but the future suddenly seemed full of possibilities the Council could never imagine. Dr. Jun Park stood before the wall of equations in his underground laboratory. 10 years had passed since Earth's rejection from the Galactic Council. 10 years of work, failure, and small victories. The lab hummed with energy as his team worked through the night. Above them, the old United Nations building in Seoul had been converted into the headquarters of Earth's Independent Development Initiative. Try it again, Jun said to his assistant. Increase the particle acceleration by 12%. The young physicist nodded and adjusted the controls. In the center of the lab, 2 crystalline chambers glowed with blue light. Inside each, a single subatomic particle spun in perfect suspension. Entanglement stable, the assistant reported. Distance between particles, 8,000 kilometers. Jun nodded. That was the easy part. Council races had mastered quantum entanglement centuries ago, using it for instantaneous communication across vast distances. What they had never achieved, or perhaps never needed, was hiding these communications from detection. Initiating signal through the first particle, Jun said. He typed a simple message on his console. The ESSDRs are waiting. The particle in the chamber flickered. 8,000 kilometers away, in a similar lab beneath the Andes Mountains, its twin particle would mirror the pattern exactly. Now for the real test, Jun said. He pressed a blue button on his console. Stealth protocol active. The quantum field around the particle shifted, its signature changing in ways that Council monitoring systems were not designed to detect. It was like speaking in a frequency range that their listeners couldn't hear. His communication panel lit up. A voice with a slight South American accent came through. Message received clearly, Dr. Park. No evidence of signal leakage detected by our Council standard monitoring equipment. Jun closed his eyes briefly. After 3 years of work, they had done it. Humanity now had a way to communicate across space without the Council knowing. Prepare the report for the Security Council, he told his team, and get me a direct line to Professor Lee at the Mars Research Station. 2 months later, Jun stepped onto the surface of Mars, the red dust swirling around his boots. The biodome of Research Station Alpha rose above him like a crystal flower, its panels gleaming in the pale sunlight. Inside, he was greeted by Professor Yun Lee, her face lined with fatigue, but her eyes bright with excitement. You came at the perfect time, she said, leading him through corridors filled with researchers and engineers. We're testing the full-scale prototype today. They entered an enormous hangar where a small spacecraft sat on a launch pad. Unlike conventional ships, this one had no visible engines. Its hull was covered in a pattern of intricate geometric lines that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. The dimensional folder, Jun said with reverence. It actually exists. Yun nodded. 3 years ago, it was just mathematics. 1 year ago, we could fold space around a marble. Today, we're ready to test it with a crewed vessel. A team of engineers swarmed around the ship, making final adjustments. Yun led Jun to the control center overlooking the hangar. The principle is simple, she explained, though both knew it was anything but. Instead of moving through space, we fold the space itself, creating a pocket dimension that briefly connects 2 points. The ship slips through this pocket, effectively bypassing normal space entirely. And Council detection systems, Jun asked. They look for warp signatures, hyperspace windows, or quantum tunneling effects. Yun said with a small smile. We don't use any of those methods. To their sensors, our ships will simply disappear from one location and appear at another, with no transit signature at all. The test pilot, a former fighter pilot named Min, climbed into the small craft. His voice came through the speakers. Dimensional folder pre-launch checks complete. Ready when you are, Professor. Took a deep breath. Remember, Min, if anything feels wrong, abort immediately. This is just a test run to the Phobos station and back. Understood, Min replied. Though I'm hoping to make history today, not become a cautionary tale. The control room fell silent as started the countdown. Dimensional fold initiating in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ship didn't launch in any conventional sense. There was no flame, no acceleration. Instead, the air around it seemed to ripple like water. The geometric patterns on its hull glowed briefly, and then the ship simply vanished. Jun checked the monitors. No energy signature detected by our Council standard sensors. Yun nodded, her eyes fixed on another screen showing the vicinity of Phobos, Mars's largest moon, 9,000 kilometers away. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then a blip appeared. Phobos station reports visual confirmation. A technician called out. The ship has arrived safely. The team erupted in cheers. Yun allowed herself a brief smile before raising her hand for quiet. Let's wait for the return trip before we celebrate. 3 minutes later, the ship reappeared on the launch pad, exactly where it had started. Min emerged, his face split with a wide grin. The ride was completely smooth, he reported. No sensation of movement at all. One second I was here, the next I was looking at Phobos. Then I was back. Eun turned to June, her expression serious despite the success around them. We did it. We can now move through Council space undetected. And combined with my quantum entanglement communications, Jun began. We can coordinate without them knowing, Yun finished. Earth is no longer effectively quarantined. 6 months later, Jun and Yun stood before the United Earth Security Council in the underground chamber beneath New Geneva. They had just presented their findings and the successful test results of both technologies. Admiral Sung, head of Earth's Defense Forces, leaned forward. Let me understand this clearly. We can now communicate instantly across any distance without detection, and our ships can travel through Council space without being noticed. Correct, Jun said. As long as we're careful about our departure and arrival points. We can't appear or disappear in areas under active surveillance. Counselor Hannah Kim, the former ambassador who had faced Earth's rejection a decade earlier, tapped her fingers on the table. Her hair had gone gray, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. The Council quarantined us because they feared our potential, she said. Now we have 2 technologies that already surpass their capabilities. The question is, what do we do with them? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They could violate the quarantine, spy on Council worlds, perhaps even steal advanced technology. But any discovery of these activities would reset their 50-cycle punishment. We build, said Director Ji Hu of Colonial Development. We establish colonies beyond the quarantine border, on worlds the Council has ignored. We create our own network, our own civilization, beyond their knowledge or control. Ian nodded. The dimensional folder technology can be scaled up. We could transport colony ships directly to suitable planets, bypassing traditional space lanes entirely. And my team has already adapted quantum entanglement communication for installation on these colony ships, June added. They could maintain constant contact with Earth without detection. Admiral Sung studied the star chart projected above the table. The Council controls only about 8% of the galaxy. They focus on resource-rich, easily terraformable worlds along established trade routes. That leaves us plenty of options. Hannah Kim stood up, her decision made. Prepare 10 colony ships. Select volunteers who understand the risks and the secrecy required. Choose worlds rich in resources, but challenging enough that the Council has deemed them not worth the effort. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. 10 years ago, they rejected us because they feared what we might become. Now we will become something they never imagined possible. As the meeting dispersed, June and Eun walked together through the underground corridors. Are we doing the right thing? Eun asked quietly. Technically, we're violating the quarantine. June considered this. The Council gave us no choice. They feared us, so they isolated us. But they didn't understand that isolation would force us to develop in ways they never anticipated. He stopped at a viewport that looked out at the night sky above Geneva. Besides, we're not expanding to challenge them. We're simply finding our own path among the stars. Ewan followed his gaze upward. Where others see obstacles, we see opportunity, she said, quoting the motto that had become popular across Earth in recent years. As they watched, a shooting star blazed briefly across the sky, or perhaps it was one of their new ships, slipping away to plant the seeds of humanity's future among the distant stars. Governor Minho stood at the observation deck of Titan's Forge, watching the massive excavators tear into the planet's crust. The machines were unlike anything that existed on Earth 25 years ago, when the Galactic Council had first imposed their ban. Each excavator stood 12 stories tall, their diamond-tipped drills cutting through rock that would have been impenetrable to Council mining technology. Production is up 8% this quarter, said Chief Mining Engineer Suman, joining him at the viewport. The new quantum-guided drill bits are working even better than we hoped. Minho nodded with satisfaction. How much triaxium have we refined? Nearly 600 tons, Suman replied. The Council worlds consider it practically mythical. Their mining methods can't extract it without the ore degrading. Titan's Forge had been chosen precisely for this reason. When Earth's scouts had first discovered the planet 15 years ago, they'd recognized the potential immediately. Its crust contained some of the rarest elements in the galaxy, but in formations that made conventional mining impossible. It had taken human ingenuity and desperation to develop methods that worked. "Is the transport ready?" Minho asked. Suman checked her wrist display. "The dimensional fold is scheduled for 1800 hours. The shipment will arrive at New Terra Central Distribution within minutes of departure." Beyond the mining complex, the settlement of Titan's Forge spread across the valley floor. What had started as a small outpost of prefabricated habitats had grown into a thriving colony of nearly 50,000 people. Children who had never seen Earth played in parks beneath the biodomes. Scientists and engineers who had been mere students when the band began now led teams developing technologies that surpassed anything the Council possessed. "The Council representatives are due to visit Proxima Station next week," Minho said. "Their regular check to ensure we're still obediently waiting behind our quarantine line." Suman smiled. "Meanwhile, we have 32 colonies and outposts they know nothing about." 34 as of yesterday, Minho corrected. The settlement on Vega Prime just reported successful establishment of their biodome. A chime from Minho's communication device interrupted their conversation. "Governor, there's a priority transmission from Commander Geo at Contact Station. She says it's urgent." Minho's expression grew serious. Contact Station orbited a seemingly uninhabited world at the edge of what humans now called the Shadow Network, their web of hidden colonies and installations. Its purpose was to monitor for any signs of Council activity, but also to watch for something humans had long suspected: other species that might have been rejected or overlooked by the Council. "I'll take it in my office," Minho said. Commander Jiho's holographic image flickered to life in Minho's office. Even through the quantum-entangled transmission, Minho could see the excitement in her eyes. "Governor, we've made contact," she said without preamble. "And they're not alone." Minho leaned forward. "You found non-Council species." 3 distinct civilizations, Joe confirmed. The lithoids are silicon-based life forms from a high-gravity world. The Council rejected them 200 cycles ago because their thought processes were too alien and they couldn't establish effective communication protocols. "But you managed to communicate with them?" Minho asked. Jiho nodded. "It took time, but yes, they don't use sound for communication. They transmit thought patterns through controlled crystalline resonance. Once we understood the principle, we built an interface." "And the others?" "The Vespidae are a hive mind species," Joe continued. "Individually not highly intelligent, but collectively capable of remarkable creativity and technology. The Council feared their reproduction rate and collective consciousness." "And the third?" "The Luminary," Jiho said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're pure energy beings who inhabit the coronas of stars. The Council couldn't even perceive them properly until the Luminary built mechanical interfaces to communicate. They were deemed too mysterious, too powerful to risk inclusion." Minho sat back, absorbing the implications. "How did you find them all at once?" "We didn't," Jiho explained. "We found the lithoids first, 3 months ago. We've been keeping it quiet until we established trust. They introduced us to the others. All these species have been aware of each other for centuries, conducting limited trade and communication while avoiding Council detection. Just like us," Minho said softly. "Exactly like us," Jiho agreed. "Governor, they're calling themselves the Excluded. And they're very interested in what humanity has built in just 25 years. 6 months later, Minho stood in a very different kind of meeting room. The environmental controls had been adjusted to accommodate the various needs of the delegates present. The lithoid representative rested on a high-gravity platform, its crystalline body refracting light in complex patterns. The Vespida collective was represented by a cluster of insectoid beings that moved in perfect coordination. The luminary delegate glowed softly within a containment field that both protected it and allowed it to maintain its energy form. The shadow network has proven the council wrong, Minho addressed the gathering. They believed isolation would weaken us all. Instead, it has made us stronger, more innovative, more determined. The lithoid's translator converted its crystalline vibrations into speech. Humans achieve in decades what takes others centuries. Your dimensional folding technology alone would revolutionize travel for all excluded species. The Vespidae representatives moved in a wave-like pattern that their translator interpreted. Our hive minds have developed biological technologies beyond council understanding. Combined with human mechanical engineering, we could create hybrid systems previously unimaginable. The luminary pulsed with light. Its translation came through as a melodic voice. We can teach you to harvest energy directly from stars without the crude methods the Council employs. Your quantum communication network could be expanded 1,000-fold with our knowledge of subspace frequency manipulation. Minho looked around the room at these extraordinary beings, species the Council had determined were too different, too unpredictable, or too powerful to join their carefully ordered community. In rejecting them, the Council had inadvertently created the seeds of something far more dynamic and innovative. Then let us formalize this alliance, Minho proposed. The excluded will become the foundation of a new interstellar community, one built on mutual respect for our differences rather than fear of them. 5 years later, Minho stood with Admiral Yunno aboard the observation deck of Harmony Station, the massive space habitat that now served as the headquarters for what had officially become the Alliance of Excluded Species. Below them, ships of various designs moved through the docking bays. Human vessels with their distinctive dimensional fold geometry, crystalline lithoid ships that seemed to grow rather than be built, organic Vespidae hive ships that pulsed like living hearts, luminary vessels that appeared as little more than controlled solar flares. The trade network now spans 62 star systems, Admiral Yunno reported. Council border patrols have increased, but they've detected nothing. Our dimensional fold technology, combined with luminary energy cloaking, makes our ships completely invisible to their sensors. Minho nodded. And the defense grid. The lithoid crystal lattice shield generators are operational throughout the Alliance core worlds, Yunho said. If the Council ever discovered us and decided to attack, they would find our defenses far beyond anything they've encountered before. A delegation of human and Vespidae scientists passed by, deep in discussion about a new project combining human neural interface technology with Vespida collective consciousness principles. In another section of the station, lithoid engineers were helping human colonists design a settlement that could withstand the crushing gravity of a world rich in ultra-dense elements. 25 years ago, we thought the Council's ban was the end of humanity's journey to the stars, Minho said. We never imagined it would be just the beginning of something far greater. The station's quantum communication hub chimed with an incoming priority message. A young officer approached them. Sir, we've received intelligence from our observers near Council space. The Drek Empire is mobilizing its fleet. It appears they're preparing for a major military action against the Council. Minho and Yunho exchanged glances. The Drek Empire was the Council's most powerful and aggressive member species, a militaristic culture that had long chafed under the Council's restrictions. If the Council falls to the Drek, Yunho said quietly, the quarantine of Earth becomes meaningless. And the excluded alliance would face a new threat, Minho added, one that might discover us all. As they studied the incoming reports, Minho thought about how the shadow network had grown from necessity into something remarkable, a parallel galactic civilization that operated beyond the knowledge of the Council that had rejected them all. We've been preparing for 50 years of quarantine, Minho said. But I believe our time of hiding may end much sooner than that. Admiral Yunno nodded gravely. The question is, are we ready to step out of the shadows? Minho looked out at the diverse ships and beings moving through the station, the excluded who had become humanity's greatest allies. We're not just ready, he said. We've become something the Council never imagined possible. The Galactic Council's central space station hung in orbit around the planet Illumar, its elegant spires and crystalline habitats reflecting the light of the nearby sun. For thousands of years, it had represented the pinnacle of civilization, the heart of order in the galaxy. Now, it burned. Admiral Jin Kang watched the real-time quantum feed from the bridge of the UES Defiant, the flagship of humanity's Shadow Fleet. The images showed Drek warships, massive, angular vessels covered in biological armor, methodically destroying the Council's defenses. How did they break through so quickly? Asked Captain Minji, Jin's second-in-command. The Council's defensive network hasn't changed in over 500 years, Jin replied. The Drek have been part of the Council all that time, studying its weaknesses. The Drek Empire had always been the most militaristic of the Council races, reptilian warriors who valued strength above all else. For centuries, they had chafed under the Council's restrictions on expansion and military development. Now, in what should have been the 49th year of Earth's quarantine, they had finally struck. All Shadow Network colonies are on high alert, Minji reported. The Alliance of Excluded Species has activated their defense grids. Jin nodded. For nearly half a century, humanity and their fellow outcasts had built a parallel civilization in secret. They had expected to reveal themselves at the end of the 50-cycle quarantine, but the Drek's sudden attack had changed everything. What about Earth? Jin asked. Still untouched, Minji said. The Drek are focusing on the core Council worlds first. They don't consider Earth a threat. Jin allowed herself a thin smile. Their mistake. The bridge doors slid open, and Ambassador Hyun entered. Once a junior diplomat, he had risen to become humanity's representative to the Alliance of Excluded Species. Now, in this crisis, he served as the civilian authority on this military mission. The Alliance Council has reached a decision, Hyun announced. We will intervene. Jin had expected this, but the confirmation still sent a jolt through her system. After decades of hiding, of building their strength in secret, they were about to reveal themselves to the galaxy. Do we have approval to deploy the Luminary Shield technology? Jin asked. Hyun nodded. The Luminary themselves have offered to augment our fleet. The Lithoids are providing crystal lattice armor reinforcement. The Vespidae have contributed their drone swarms for point defense. Jin turned to the tactical display. It showed the spread of the Drek attack, red indicators flaring across the map as world after world fell to their onslaught. Blue markers indicated civilian refugee ships fleeing the combat zones, many of them being picked off by Drek hunters. The Council is evacuating Illumar, Minji reported. High Councilor Talon and the remaining delegates are boarding escape vessels, but the Drek have blockaded the main jump points. Jin made her decision. Set course for Illumar. Prepare the fleet for dimensional fold. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Unlike conventional Council ships, which required acceleration and established jump points for faster-than-light travel, the Shadow Fleet's vessels simply disappeared from one point in space and reappeared at another. All ships report ready, Minji announced. Jin took a deep breath. For decades, humans had lived with the sting of rejection, working in secret, building their strength. Now they would show the galaxy what humanity had become. Execute dimensional fold, she ordered. The starfield outside the viewports rippled like water. There was a moment of disorientation that veterans of dimensional travel had learned to ignore, and then the Defiant and its 50 escort ships appeared on the edge of the Illumar system. Immediately, their sensors registered the chaos. Dozens of Council evacuation ships trying to escape, hundreds of Drek warships firing indiscriminately. The once beautiful Council station breaking apart under sustained bombardment. Open a channel, Jin ordered. Broadcast on all frequencies, all languages. Minji nodded when the channel was ready. Jin stood straight, her voice clear and commanding. This is Admiral Jin Kang of the United Earth Defense Force. We offer immediate evacuation and protection to all civilian populations. Council vessels, transmit your coordinates and passenger manifests. We will provide escort and safe passage." The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then the communications array lit up with hundreds of desperate transmissions. "They're responding," Minji said, surprised. "Council evacuation ships are sending their coordinates." "And the Drek?" Jin asked. As if in answer, a squadron of Drek destroyers broke away from the main fleet and accelerated toward the human vessels. "They're targeting us," Minji reported. "Weapons charging." Ambassador Hyun stepped forward. "Perhaps we should attempt communication." "The Drek don't negotiate during combat," Jin cut him off. "It's not in their nature." She turned to her weapons officer. "Activate luminary shields. Deploy Vespida defense swarms." The space around the human fleet shimmered as energy fields unlike anything the Council had ever seen came to life. Small, organic-looking drones launched from the larger ships, forming a protective cloud. The Drek opened fire. Their energy weapons, powerful enough to shatter Council shields, splashed harmlessly against the luminary barriers. "Return fire," Jin ordered. "Targeted strikes only. Disable their weapons and engines." The human fleet responded with precision. Beams of concentrated energy sliced through the Drek ship's biological armor, targeting specific systems rather than attempting to destroy the vessels outright. Within minutes, the attacking squadron drifted powerless. "The rest of the Drek fleet is regrouping," Minji reported. "They're bringing their dreadnoughts into position." Jin nodded calmly. "Begin evacuation operations. Direct our transport ships to the Council evacuation vessels. Use dimensional fold to jump them directly to the safety coordinates." On the tactical display, blue dots representing Council refugee ships began disappearing, not because they were destroyed, but because human transports were jumping them instantly to safety through dimensional fold technology. "Sir," called out the sensor officer, "we're detecting the Council flagship attempting to break through the blockade. It's carrying High Councilor Talon and the remaining Council leadership." Jin studied the display. The elegant Council vessel was surrounded by Drek attackers, its shields failing. "Move to intercept," she ordered. "Prepare for close-range dimensional fold." The Defiant vanished, reappearing directly alongside the embattled Council ship. The luminary shields extended to encompass both vessels. "Establishing communication with the Council flagship," Minji reported. The main view screen activated, showing the bridge of the Council vessel. Damage was evident. Panels sparking. Crew members of various species working frantically to maintain systems. In the center stood High Councilor Talon, his translucent body pulsing with stress patterns. His 7 eyes widened at the sight of Jin. "You're human," he said, his translator struggling to convey his shock. "Yes, Counselor," Jin replied. "And we're here to save your life, along with everyone else aboard your ship." Talon's appendages rippled in a pattern that the ship's cultural database identified as confusion mixed with suspicion. "The quarantine is no longer relevant," Jin cut him off. "Right now, we need to get you to safety. We'll discuss the past 50 years once the immediate crisis is contained." For a moment, Talon seemed to struggle with the decision. Then a nearby explosion rocked his ship, and practicality won out. "We accept your assistance," he said. Jin nodded to her crew. "Establish a hard dock connection. Prepare for passenger transfer." As the evacuation proceeded, Jin returned to the tactical display. More human ships were appearing throughout the system, rescuing stranded Council vessels and engaging Drek attackers. The battle was far from over, but the intervention had changed its course dramatically. Ambassador Hyun joined her at the display. "The Drek didn't expect us," he observed. "They certainly didn't expect our technology." 50 years of isolation forced us to innovate," Jin replied. "And finding the other excluded species accelerated our development beyond what even we thought possible." Hyun watched as the High Counselor and other council leaders were escorted onto the Defiant. What do you think they'll say when they learn about the Shadow Network? About all we've built while they thought we were contained? Jin considered this as she observed Talon being led onto her bridge. The High Counselor moved hesitantly, his appendages close to his body, a sign of anxiety in his species. 50 years ago, you feared what we might become, Jin said quietly, echoing the words of their long-ago rejected ambassador. Today, you need what we have become. Talon approached slowly, his translator producing a voice that seemed humbler than the one humans had heard decades earlier. Admiral Kang, the Council owes you a debt that cannot be easily repaid. Jin inclined her head slightly. The evacuation is still ongoing, Counselor. We can discuss debts and history once your people are safe. Where? Talon hesitated. Where will you take us? To New Terra, Jin replied. The heart of human space, and the capital of the Alliance of Excluded Species. Talon's body rippled with what might have been surprise. Excluded species. Jin allowed herself a small smile. You'll find, Counselor, that humans weren't the only ones to thrive beyond your knowledge and control. The galaxy is much larger and much more diverse than the Council ever realized. As the Defiant prepared to dimensional fold with its valuable passengers, Jin looked out at the battle continuing around the burning Council station. The Drek had begun this war thinking they faced only the rigid, predictable defenses of the Galactic Council. They were about to discover just how much had changed in 50 years. The Sagittarius Gate glittered with the wreckage of Drek warships, what had once been the pride of their empire. Massive bio-armored dreadnoughts and swarms of fighter craft now drifted as broken hulls against the backdrop of stars. The battle had lasted 3 days. It had changed the galaxy forever. Admiral Jin Kang stood on the observation deck of the UES Defiant, watching as recovery ships collected survivors from both sides. Unlike the Drek, who left there defeated to die, the human-led alliance rescued everyone they could. The Hive Empress has requested terms of surrender, Captain Minji reported, joining Jin at the viewport. Jin nodded. The Drek Hive Empress had never surrendered before. In all their long history, they had either conquered or fought to the last warrior. That they now sought terms revealed how thoroughly Admiral Kang's strategy had broken them. And the Council representatives? Jin asked. Still processing what they witnessed, Minji said with a small smile. They can't quite believe how we defeated the Drek. The Battle of Sagittarius Gate had showcased everything the Shadow Network had developed over 50 years of isolation. Human dimensional fold drives had allowed their ships to appear and disappear across the battlefield, striking from impossible angles. Lithoid crystal lattice armor had deflected the Drek's most powerful weapons. Vespide drone swarms had intercepted incoming fire with perfect coordination. Luminary energy manipulation had disabled Drek biosystems without destroying their ships. But most impressive had been the integration of these technologies, something only humans, with their adaptive creativity, could have achieved in such a short time. The Council spent thousands of years convincing themselves that stability required predictability, Jin said. The Drek's attack shattered that illusion. Our victory showed them a different path forward. A message chimed on Jin's communicator. Admiral, your presence is requested on New Terra. The peace conference begins in 6 hours. New Terra's Grand Assembly Hall had been built for this moment. Though humans had constructed it, the design incorporated elements from all the excluded species. Lithoid crystal accents that refracted light in beautiful patterns, Vespide organic architecture that seemed to breathe with the occupants, and luminary energy fields that adjusted the environment for each species' comfort. Jin entered through the main doors, now wearing her formal uniform. The hall was already filling with representatives from across the galaxy. Former Council species mingled awkwardly with the excluded they had once rejected. Drek delegates, stripped of their weapons and military insignia, stood stiffly in their assigned area, their defeat still fresh. High Counselor Talon approached Jin, his translucent body pulsing with what the Admiral had learned to recognize as respectful greeting. "Admiral Kang," he said, his translator producing a voice that carried genuine emotion. "Once again, I find myself in the unexpected position of thanking a human." Jin inclined her head slightly. "The Alliance did what was necessary, Counselor. Nothing more." "Nothing more." Talon's appendages rippled with what might have been disbelief. "You saved billions of lives. You defeated an enemy we thought unbeatable. And you did it all with technologies we never imagined possible. Technologies you feared we might develop," Jin reminded him gently. "That's why Earth was quarantined, wasn't it? The Council worried about our potential." Talon's body dimmed slightly, a sign of embarrassment in his species, a mistake we now recognize all too clearly. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of President Da-Yoon of the United Earth Government. Unlike many political leaders, Dai had earned his position through decades of work building the Shadow Network. He had been one of the original colonists on New Terra, living in a prefabricated habitat when the planet was first settled. Now he led not just humanity, but the entire alliance of excluded species. "Counselor Talon," Dag greeted the alien diplomat. "I see you've already found Admiral Kang. Good. We'll be starting shortly." Talon's translator conveyed his hesitation. "President Yoon, before we begin, many council members are concerned about what this new arrangement will mean. The Drek have been defeated, yes, but our old system maintained peace for thousands of years." Day smiled. "A rigid peace that stifled innovation and excluded anyone who didn't fit your narrow parameters. We have something better to offer." The lights dimmed slightly, signaling that the conference was about to begin. Jin took her place with the military command staff, while Da moved to the central platform. As the assembly quieted, Jin looked around the hall. 50 years ago, humanity had stood alone, rejected, and isolated. Now they had built something remarkable, not an empire of conquest, but a network of cooperation that had saved the very civilization that had once turned them away. President Day raised his hands, and the hall fell silent. "Distinguished representatives of all species," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the perfect acoustics. "We gather today at a pivotal moment in galactic history. The old order has fallen. The Drek Empire's aggression has been contained. Now we must decide what will rise in its place." Images appeared above the assembly. Planets devastated by the Drek attacks, starships rescuing civilians, the decisive battle of Sagittarius Gate. 50 years ago, Earth was deemed too unpredictable, too innovative, too adaptive to join the Galactic Council. Dai continued. "We were quarantined, isolated, contained. But the quarantine intended to contain us instead freed us from the constraints of your traditional thinking. The ban meant to punish us became our greatest advantage." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The council species shifted uncomfortably, while the excluded allies nodded in agreement. "In isolation, we found strength. In rejection, we found purpose. And most importantly, in our search for a place among the stars, we found others like us, species whose unique qualities were feared rather than valued." Day gestured to the lithoid, Vespida, and luminary representatives. "Together, we built something the Council never imagined possible. A civilization based not on conformity, but on complementary differences. Not on stability through stagnation, but on resilience through adaptation." The Drek delegates stirred restlessly. Their lead representative, a scared veteran of many campaigns, spoke up. "And now you will impose your will on the defeated, just as conquerors always do." Day turned to face the Drek directly. "No, that is precisely what we will not do." Surprise rippled through the assembly. "The human accord that we propose today dissolves the old council," Day explained, "not to replace it with another dominant power, but to establish a new interstellar governing body where all species have equal representation, including the Drek." The Drek representative scales shifted in a pattern of disbelief. "After all we did, after we attacked your allies, Yes, Daz said simply. Because the cycle of dominance and submission is what we seek to end. The old council feared difference. The Drek sought to rule through force. We offer a third path, collaboration that values each species' unique strengths. Above the assembly, a new image formed, a complex, interconnected network of stars, with pathways linking them in patterns that seemed both ordered and organic. This is the Shadow Network as it exists today, Dad explained, built in secret during our quarantine. 38 human colonies, 26 lithoid crystal worlds, 17 Vespidae hive clusters, 12 luminary stellar habitats, all connected by technologies that evolved because we were forced to find our own way. The image expanded, incorporating the former council worlds in a larger, more complex network. This is what we can build together, Daz said. A galactic community that doesn't fear innovation or difference, but harnesses them for the benefit of all. High Counselor Talon moved forward, his appendages arranged in the formal pattern used for historic occasions. As the senior surviving member of the Galactic Council, he announced, I recognize that our old ways have failed us. When we needed defense against the Drek, it was the very species we rejected who saved us. He turned to face Dad directly. The Council accepts the human accord, Talon declared. We dissolve our former body and join this new alliance as equals, not leaders. A ripple of surprise, and then approval, moved through the assembly. Even some of the Drek delegates seemed to relax slightly. Day bowed his head in acknowledgement. Then let us begin the work of rebuilding and reconnecting. Hours later, after the formal signing ceremony, Jin found herself on a balcony overlooking New Terra's capital city. The metropolis shimmered with lights against the gathering darkness, its architecture a harmonious blend of human design and alien influences. Ambassador Hyun joined her, looking tired but satisfied. The human accord is signed. A new era begins. Jin nodded, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. 50 years ago, I was a child when Earth was rejected. I remember my parents' anger, their sense of injustice. And now? Hyun asked. Now I understand that rejection was the best thing that could have happened to us. Jin said. If we had joined the council then, we would have conformed to their ways, adopted their limitations. Instead, we were forced to forge our own path. Below them, the city hummed with activity as representatives of dozens of species moved through the streets. Former enemies, now tentative allies. Former outcasts, now equal partners. We didn't build an empire of conquest, Jin observed. We built something stronger, a network of connections between those who think differently. Hyun smiled. The greatest revenge against those who underestimated us was to become better than they ever imagined we could be. Jin finished. In the distance, a